So sometimes it's helpful to look back, to ground ourselves in our shared history and theology. History and theology that provide a connection to our work of resistance today. Resistance is the theme for April. I want to begin today sharing a little bit about Theodore Parker and his anti-slavery work, and then move into current day with a call to continue to engage in justice work and social change. Dean Grodzins is the author of a book titled American Heretic, Theodore Parker and Transcendentalism, and in an article in the UU World magazine, which is a magazine put out by the Unitarian Universalist Association, he writes about Parker's impact on our faith. He says that Theodore Parker was perhaps the most influential American Unitarian minister who ever lived. He was one of the greatest preachers, the leader with Ralph Waldo Emerson and Margaret Fuller of the Transcendentalist movement, and a major anti-slavery leader and theorist of democracy. His example inspired generations of radical activists. He was born in 1810 in Lexington, Massachusetts. He was one of those Renaissance men who we hear about. I don't know what was going on back then, but by the age of 25, he could read 20 languages. He was ordained and settled in 1837 at the age of 27 at a small Unitarian parish in West Roxbury, Massachusetts, which is now called Theodore Parker Church. He soon gained a reputation as a powerful orator. In 1841, he issued one of the greatest transcendentalist manifestos, the Discourse on Permanence and Transience in Christianity. Maybe even a year ago, I spent a service kind of focusing on that text. It's interesting if you ever want to read it. You may actually just want to read an article about it, because then you can get the excerpts that are meaty and not have to slog your way through it all. In that article, in that manifesto, as he called it, he talked about how the Bible had no miraculous authority, and he declared it full of myths. Now, this is what people would say is definitely heretical in that period of time, not only with other Christians, but even with Christians within our own movement. His outspokenness made him a leading radical theologian in America in his time, and evangelicals and even most Unitarians and Universalists denounced Parker as an infidel. But generations later, which often happens, liberal religionists came to see him more as a prophet. He was one of the first American clergy to endorse women's suffrage, and he was one of the first to refer to God as both male and female. He became the intellectual leader of the anti-slavery movement. He opposed the pro-slavery Mexican War, and he took charge of the Boston movement to rescue fugitive slaves. Grodzin writes of two well-known quotes inspired by Parker's words. It's sometimes nice to know where some of the echoes of Unitarianism are in our current society. He said, "One is the definition of democracy as a government of the people, by the people, for the people," which you have heard from the words of Abraham Lincoln. But he actually adapted a phrase that Parker had used, which was a little different. It was government of all the people, by all the people, for all the people. A little more inclusive, I would say. And then there were the familiar words of the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. This is a phrase that crops up all over, and most people think of it as from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But he was paraphrasing Parker in his book, 10 Sermons of Religion, where he wrote, "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by experience of sight. I can divine it in my conscience. And from what I can see, I am sure it bends towards justice." Parker, like the rest of our Unitarian and Universalist forefathers and foremothers, was a Christian, and his faith and his call to be a social reformer was because of his faith and his sources and his beliefs. But as Grodzin commented, he was often considered a heretic, and really pushed Christian tenets out of the comfort zone for many in his current time. His God was a loving God, a God that he believed called him to act on social issues of the day. And as the issue of slavery moved more into the center of his ministry as the years went by, he really once again stood separate from some of his colleagues. After the passing of the Fugitive Slave Act in 1850, Parker openly feuded with other ministers. So the Fugitive Slave Act, if you can't remember, it allowed slave hunters to seize alleged fugitive slaves without any due process of law and prohibited anybody from aiding escaped slaves or obstructing their recovery. The act also made the federal government, like commissioners, responsible for finding and returning and trying escaped slaves. So there were a large number of Unitarians who supported the Fugitive Slave Act. First of all, just because it was a law and they followed the laws. And secondly, because their wealth and their comfort and their security was gained off of the back of enslaved people. For instance, there was a congregation led by Reverend Dr. Ezra Stiles Gannett, which was in Boston, same town as where Parker's congregation was, which included a fugitive slave commissioner. While Parker's included fugitive slaves. You can sense there might be some tension there. In 1851, in a speech at a ministerial conference, Parker spoke powerfully to Gannett and others who supported the law. He said, "The fugitive slave law is one that contradicts the acknowledged precepts of the Christian religion, universally acknowledged. It violates the noble instincts of humanity, and it asks us to trample on the laws of God. It commands what nature, religion, and God alike forbid, and it forbids what nature, religion, and God commands. It tends to defeat the object of all just human law. It tends to annihilate the observance of the law of God. So faithful to God, to religion, to human nature, and to the name of law itself, we protest against this particular statute, and we trample it under our feet." He continued, "I have in my church Black men fugitive slaves. They are the crown of my apostleship, the seal of my ministry. It becomes me to look after their bodies in order to save their souls. This law has brought me into the most intimate connection with the sin of slavery. I've been obliged to take my parishioners into my house to keep them out of the clutches of the kidnapper. Yes, gentlemen, I have been obliged to do that and to keep my doors guarded by day as well as by night. Yes, I have to arm myself. I have written sermons with a pistol at my desk, loaded and ready for action." He wasn't messing around. He was known as an abolitionist minister at large. He chaired the executive committee of the Vigilance Committee, the group that helped with legal assistance, financial support, and hid and transported individuals who were threatened to be captured. He was even indicted by a federal grand jury in 1954. He was charged with obstructing a federal marshal when he helped hide a man by the name of Anthony Burns. By that time, fortunately, the larger society was on Parker's side, and prosecuting him would have just been politically divisive, so the case was later dismissed on a technicality. As the years progressed, he became more radical. He started to raise money for purchasing weapons for the militia in Kansas during the late 1850s, when there was a violent guerrilla warfare between pro-slavery and anti-slavery forces known as Bleeding Kansas. That was before the Civil War. And in 1859, he was part of a secret group that funded John Brown's unsuccessful attempt to start a slave insurrection in Virginia. Then Parker went public by writing a letter defending Brown's actions and saying that enslaved people had the right to kill their masters if they had to. Rosemary Bray McNatt, president of the Starr King School for Ministry, one of our only UU seminaries in America, points to Parker as a heretical prophet who established a justice-seeking heritage. We, she says, are not a faith unencumbered by political or social activism. No, we are a faith that stems from passionate civil rights leaders and activists like Parker. She calls Parker's faith an active faith. The words Parker spoke again and again that he spoke in 1850 was, we must end slavery, we must educate people, women must be emancipated and made equal with man. War must pass away, society must be constructed anew, so that creative love shall take the place of repressive fear. Creative love shall take the place of repressive fear. Does that feel like perhaps relevant today? The family, the community, the nation, the world, he said, must be organized on justice, not covetousness, fraud, and violence. He continues, what can we do to promote this blessed revolution? I love that term. What can we do to promote this blessed revolution? This must be our service to God, and we must not let generations pass away until we have mended all this, no matter what the cost. The blessed revolution continues, and Brian and Polly are going to play a musical interlude.
Way ahead of his time, big time. This is going to sound good because Brian's playing guitar.
And you're singing.
Yeah.
Not too loud? Nope. All right. Oh, hold on.
Ooh. There we go.
Ready?
Yep. Give me one reason to stay here, and I'll turn right back around. Give me one reason to stay here, oh, I'll turn right back around. Said I don't want to leave you lonely, you gotta make me change my mind. Baby, I got your number, oh, I know that you got mine. You know that I called you, oh, called you many times. You can call me, baby, you can call me anytime. You got to call me. Give me one reason to stay here, yeah, I'll turn right back around. Give me one reason to stay here, oh, I'll turn right back around. Said I don't want to leave you lonely, you gotta make me change my mind. I don't want no one to squeeze me, yeah, might take away my life. I don't want no one to squeeze me, yeah, might take away my life. I just want someone to hold me, ooh, and rock me through the night. This youthful heart can love you, yes, and give you what you need, yeah. I said this youthful heart can love you, oh, give you what you need. But I'm too old to go chasing around, wasting my precious energy. Give me one reason to stay here. Whoa, I turn right back around. Yeah, you can see me turning. Give me one reason to stay here. Oh, I turn right back around. You can see me turning. Said I don't want to leave you lonely. You gotta make me change my mind. All right, last time, here we go. Baby, give me one reason. Give me just one reason why. Yeah. Baby, just give me one reason. Oh, give me just one reason why. Said I told you that I love you, and there ain't no more to say.
Disclosure and humility. I thought you were going to sing talking about a revolution. I'm totally serious. So I thought I had the perfect cue. You were going to come up and sing about a revolution, and here you are singing a totally different song. And welcome to life, right? Like, this is what happens. Yeah, so anyway. No, it's no problem. It's just, life as it is. So on Friday, Diana and Kathy and I were all at the Capitol for a Trans Day of Visibility. And I have to say, one thing queer folks do really well is they get super silly, and then they friggin' bring the joy on. So as I was sitting there listening to you guys thinking, this is totally disconnected, all I kept thinking was, and it's so joyful. So who cares? Yeah, they had a drag queen dancing in the center of the Capitol, and they had another person doing these fabulous flags with fans that I think I might take up on my sabbatical. It was really fun. So we were all there as a way to support, basically Minnesota is leading the way for trans affirming legislation and declaring that trans people and all of us who love them are welcome and wanted here in Minnesota. This is a state that, is the executive director of Outfront Minnesota, Kat Rohn, said, encourages trans folks to stay visible, stay hopeful, stay beautiful, and stay strong. You belong here, she said. Then Representative Lee Finke came up. Finke is the first state representative who is a trans person, and the crowd went crazy. She referred to Baynard Rustin, who some of you may know. Baynard was one of the people who was behind the March on Washington with Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. He was an openly gay man. He was a conscientious objector. He was a nonviolent activist, a labor organizer, an LGBTQ activist, and an international peace advocate. Rustin described the 1969 Stonewall riots in New York City as the beginning of an extraordinary revolution. See that thread of revolution again that we just missed earlier? Yep, of an extraordinary revolution that he said was similar to the Montgomery bus boycott. Finke says she calls on her transcestors and those who lived with tenacity and courage to strengthen and guide her today. If you do anything from this service, take that word transcestors. It's so awesome. We've seen tremendous amount of history since 1969. We've also learned the truth about all sorts of things that were once not told or told incorrectly from a very specific white supremacy, male-centered, establishment supporting perspective. Movements for the rights of women and queer people and people with disabilities and people of color, movements that have exposed police brutality and white supremacy and our nation's original sin of manifest destiny, to name a few. We've come a long way in terms of understanding intersectionality and how social issues and injustices are interconnected. We understand the price of wealth in this country as corporations put profit before the environment. We've uncovered how democracy is influenced and corrupted by dark, what is it called? By dark money, big corporate money and dark money, and power-hungry politicians who want us to return to an America that worked for so few of us. And at this point in history, it feels like the people in this country who believe, as Parker and Rustin and Rep. Finke do, are losing the revolution, are sitting this one out, are watching from the sidelines, unable to figure out what to do to stop all that is happening around us. Last week in my video, I talked about despair, and I really want to say despair is real. The world's longest friggin' winter is real, and it has taken a toll on all of us, and nothing we care about will change unless we and others like us do something about it. Last week, there was a story in the service about that great forest fire, the story that all the animals ran from the fire and they hovered at the edge of the forest and they watched, all but a little hummingbird who picked up drops of water from a stream and over again, grabbed mouthful by mouthful, dropping it on the fire. And the animals called from the side, "What can I do? There's too much smoke." And that little hummingbird remained persistent. As a bear called out later on, "What are you doing?" The little hummingbird replied, "I am doing what I can. I am doing what I can." Honestly, we can all do something. And at this point, I'm going to let Byron come up. This is a participatory little things happening in the sermon. Byron has something that he would like to just encourage, something little that we can do.
I'll just use this.
That's fine.
Good morning. Yes, the moral arc may bend toward justice, but the arc is not smooth. However, on the hopeful side, there is a small but mighty group of women in the Nebraska legislature who have vowed to filibuster the entire legislative session to stop an anti-trans bill.
I think you should come here. You're kind of peeping in and out.
However, obviously, they are under enormous pressure from the other side, and we don't know how long they'll be able to resist. We have a small window of opportunity to let them know that we see them, that we appreciate every single day they can give us. This can be in the form of a simple email or a postcard with just the word "thank you." If you're interested, let me know after the service, and I will send you an email containing their mailing addresses and their email addresses. Thank you.
It's not an intellectual situation for us here. What's happening? It's a situation that impacts our heart and our family and our community. So if you can write a check, if you can volunteer for a nonprofit, if you want to organize a group from church like Byron's doing to write letters or to show up to speak to a legislator, if you want to call out a reporter who uses language or an image that is divisive or has a hidden bias. I'm going to be gone for the next few months, but this phenomena, the overwhelmedness and the passiveness that my weary spirit seems to be lodged in, is something that I plan to work on. Going to the rally at the Capitol on Friday was part of this journey. I refuse to be on the edge of the forest on fire and to call out in fear. I'll find ways to resist those who are trying to pull America back into ways that serve so few of us in this country. We have a beautiful country. We have an awesome state. And we have a place where that trans woman broke into dance A woman in drag in her full routine in the center of the Capitol building on Friday to a crowd that was dancing along. So I just want to lift up a little bit about what I heard on Friday, and I want you to hear the voices of those who depend on us as Minnesotans to protect them and to celebrate their lives and their futures. They asked us to go out and demand justice, not to back down, because that backing down is not an option. Both young and old trans folks spoke about the importance of gender-affirming care to keep them alive. A doctor spoke about how affirming treatment for young people, she works at Children, is about hope and possibility for young people. And she sees young people who thrive under her care. I know for some people, I've heard people who I love, who I would put in very much loving and progressive circles, question sometimes some of this stuff. Please talk to a parent or me or someone to understand that we do not get to decide when people come to fully understand themselves and ask for the care they need to thrive. We need to support everyone in this community. And yet we know that in parts of the country, people are trying to cut off lifelines for trans people. And there was so much authenticity and power present in the speaker. There was so much joy. If folks who are literally under attack in this country can lift up joy, so should we, because we can't dream without joy. So we can't envision a future where we and all of our children and other people's children and the environment thrives without joy. We have to find ways to lift ourselves up. We have to move beyond the news and the commentary. We have to put ourselves in restaurants and cafes and parks and events of people who are queer or people of color in your community. Find movies and podcasts and books and artwork that celebrates the lives of those we all hold sacred, so that you can come out of this place of fear and open your big, mushy hearts and work for justice. It's hard to live one's faith in a time of uncertainty, and it's hard to live one's faith when your heart feels small and frightened. When disbelief and fear are in the center of our days, we must be intentional about leaning into love and leaning into connection and beauty and joy so that we can impact that arc of history. It's only going to lean towards justice if we resist. May it be so. And amen. I'm, kind of sometimes ambivalent about using this hymn in services. Our colleague Kimberly DeBose has a website called Notes from the Far Fringe, and she provides reflections and sometimes backgrounds on hymns in our hymnals. She wrote this about this hymn that we're about to sing together. I know it's our duties as humans to overcome, but will we? And how will singing a song together at marches and rallies and services make a whisper of a difference? This is so aspirational, so confident. I feel so little of this morning. I am scared to death. And on a day like today, I feel paralyzed. Singing this song alone with my thoughts did nothing to assuage my fears. Perhaps it would be better if I was singing it with others. So we will sing it with each other. This I know, that there have been times when I've sung We Shall Overcome, and I have believed it deep in my soul. Times with Pete Seeger up on stage or at marches when we was full of people who had hope and vision. But at this point in history, I feel less sure about what will happen. And yet I strongly believe that we need to be able to imagine that we can get somewhere else. You need to envision what is on the other side in order to fuel the work that is needed today and in the years to come. So maybe as you sing today, it will fill you with hope. Maybe it will break your heart and fill you with grief for the loss of a clear sense of what we dream will come true. I hope you'll sing it knowing that your ancestors and transcestors sang this song and other songs like it throughout their lifetimes. May be we worthy of their dreams and make them so. We will rise in body and spirit and sing our closing hymn, 169, We Shall Overcome. As before, the hymn leaders will come up here. People at home will be muted and can sing along. Please rise in body or spirit.